Alrighty. Hey guys, that wraps it up for the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. I enjoyed every aspect of it. My predictions came true. Corstian's predictions thankfully came true. The halftime show was amazing. Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite artists to listen to. And just to hear him live was, like from the TV. I didn't go to the Super Bowl, but
I wish.
Just to hear him, like the price for Super Bowl tickets is crazy. And I think I saw on the graphic it's like 8 million. But just to see him perform live on TV was insane. And then after the fact, studying deeper and seeing like the symbolism behind every single act of his halftime performance was really incredible. I'm like, the fact he put that much thought into it for a 13-minute show was crazy. And I was thoroughly surprised by the game, but very, very entertaining. I'm happy it's not been a Chiefs repeat. We finally have a team that can challenge them from head to toe. And it was just a great game. How was your Super Bowl weekend?
It was pretty good. Yeah, happy with the Super Bowl. It's happy watching everything that happened pretty much. I like the halftime show as well. And yeah, going off of that symbols, I mean, like Kendrick's won like the Pulitzer Prize, right? Which is like one of the most prestigious writing prizes out there. And he did that for music, which I think is pretty insane. So not surprised to see a lot of symbolism within the halftime show there. But I did cook a lot of food too for the Super Bowl. I had a little party at my apartment, so made chicken wings, made some honey walnut shrimp, crab rangoons, cut up some watermelon. It was a lot of cooking, but it was fun.
Okay, dang. You gotta send me the recipe.
Yeah,
I was visiting a friend in Ann Arbor, so spent some time with him. Because he's working on his residency right now, and got caught up with him at the comedy show and stuff. My first comedy show, by the way. I love going to those because when nothing's on the table in a very like politically correct society, it's just good to escape that for a while. Not to say that everything should be non-PC. I think there's a reason for it too, but I definitely enjoyed that aspect of the comedy show. Understand, like, hey, these are all jokes; they're not meant to be taken literally, and I quite enjoyed myself. That was a good $25 investment, in my like per person. So, if you haven't been to a comedy show, definitely recommend going to it. You will not regret it. So, I'm glad you had fun. I'm gonna have to touch base with you on those recipes because I got a bunch of meats in the freezer right now and trying to decide what to do with it. And yesterday I made like a Italian sausage ravioli with like first time making tomato puree and Parmesan cheese with basil leaves. So chefing it up. We're up and coming chefs. So if you've wondered why we're gonna end the podcast, it's probably to start a cooking channel. So there you go.
I'm on a mission cooking.
100
or I'm on a mission to cook.
Yep. Alrighty. Okay. Let's dive into the game here. So, as you know, we alluded to it. Chiefs lost 40-22 to the Eagles. Just a dominant performance. At one point, it was 34-0. The Chiefs could not do anything in the first half, really the entire game. But I think the Eagles outscored them from like points to yards in the first half, 24-23. The Chiefs had 23 yards the whole half. The Eagles had 24 points. So it was just a rocky performance from Mahomes, for the line, and everything like that. Corstian, what were your thoughts when you were watching that game?
I think we saw a lot of weaknesses get exposed by the Chiefs, or of the Chiefs get exposed by the Eagles here. And like if the Chiefs, the way they played in the Super Bowl felt like a team that was 8 plays away from being 7-9 in all honesty. Which I think is like the Chiefs, inevitably they do win these close games, which is what makes them elite. But the fact that you look at the Chiefs and their close wins versus you look at how the Eagles have been winning throughout the season, and like it's always a high scoring affair or it's either like a blowout against their opponents. And I think that kind of like just looking at those two aspects of how they played throughout the regular season, despite both having phenomenal records, kind of like goes to show who may have been dominant in this game. And I have more to say about like offensive play calling and defensive stuff, but that's kind of just the base general overview of kind of my perception of the game there.
Yeah, I have more to dive into as well, and we can trade turns doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3 high-level things stand out. Chiefs clearly didn't want Saquon Barkley to beat them. They made such a concerted effort to make Jalen Hurts beat them, and they lost that battle. Jalen Hurts is actually on a higher tier than Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson because of the Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP he just had. And a lot of people forget 2 years ago, sans for that one fumble that got returned for a touchdown, Jalen Hurts was the better player in that Super Bowl. It's just that one mistake reeled him back. And you saw that he made that same one mistake. He threw an interception. But other than that, he was lights out perfect. So that's one thing. And then on the trenches on both sides of the ball, Eagles completely stifled the Chiefs' pass rush, and the Chiefs couldn't handle Josh Sweat at all. And on top of that, the one-on-ones that the other guys had, Jalen Carter, who the Bears traded back, by the way, to get Darnell Wright. Still waiting to see how Darnell Wright's doing. He's had a good season. But Jalen Carter was a huge pick by the Eagles. He showed himself out. But Josh Sweat had the bigger game, better game. Cooper DeJean was going to be the second point. The way he stayed poised as a rookie this entire game, even fooling Patrick Mahomes for that pick 6. And along that same line, Kenyon Mitchell did a great job. His stats are not going to blow you out of the water, but he did a good job pinning Xavier Worthy on the boundary to make Mahomes hold on to the ball and let the pass rush get home. And then I think the third thing is just Mahomes making bad reads under pressure. Like this was the worry you saw with him in college, is like the off balance throws and like he's not doing things fundamentally. He's been able to like develop and mature in the pros around that, and I credit him and Andy Reid for developing that part of the game. But against like great pass rush teams, like think of like the Giants in 2007, Tampa Bay when they faced the Chiefs in that Super Bowl where he struggled, and then now this game, great pass rush teams from like both defensive ends to both D tackles have a significant effect on Mahomes, just like they would on any quarterback. And you saw that Mahomes is human to that as well. So those are the 3 high-level things for me.
Yeah, I guess I can go over some high-level stuff too. I double up on your Jalen Carter take here. Like Jalen Carter, I think if it wasn't Jalen Hurts winning Super Bowl MVP, I think I would have given it to him. Because literally, so the reason why the 4-man rush worked so well for the Eagles is because they positioned Jalen Carter on their best 2 offensive linemen. Because like Jalen Carter is a must double type of player. And so when you have your 2 best O linemen being forced to guard Jalen Carter, you pretty much open up the rest of your 3 rushers to one-on-one pass rush competition where they have a significant advantage. And so that's like a huge aspect. And also we saw Milton Williams absolutely eat during the Super Bowl. Didn't he have like 2 sacks and and we were talking about, he's probably like the least well-known player.
He's the 3rd best DT on that team.
But he's still balled out, which I think, again, goes to show how dominant Jalen Carter is, just because everybody is forced to double team him, which, again, opens up so much room for these other guys to play. And then another point, I feel like this season, a lot of people wrote Jalen Hurts off. Because I mean, he had 2,900 pass yards, but I mean, like they ran the offense through Saquon. But I think a lot of people this year, even last season, were saying that Jalen Hurts is not that great of a quarterback. But like, if you look back, in 2022, Jalen Hurts was 2nd team All-Pro, and for the MVP voting that season, he finished 2nd place in MVP voting. Like, this man knows how to throw the football. And then we saw it done in the Super Bowl where it's like, I've been saying throughout the playoffs for the Eagles, like their offense is through Saquon, but if you stop Saquon, Jalen Hurts is more than a qualified passer. We saw it against the Commanders just 2 weeks prior, and then remember earlier in the season when AJ Brown apparently had beef with the passing game or whatever, and literally the next game they just air the ball out and AJ Brown absolutely eats during the game. Like we've known Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, but I feel like the Chiefs' goal to winning the game, at least on defense, was if we stop Saquon, we stop their offense. But like Jalen Hurts is amongst the best quarterbacks in the league right now. It just his stats didn't show it this year because they didn't need him to pad his stats in close games or in blowouts. Like it was Saquon season this year, and so that's kind of my take there. And then I think my big point number 3 is I think this game exposed Patrick. I mean, offensive line for the Chiefs sucked. The tackles were abysmal, but I think it exposed Patrick Mahomes as a weak pre-snap quarterback. Because because I think they've been overly reliant on if the play breaks down, Mahomes has excellent escapability, which I mean, if that's working, like I don't blame you for not trying to work on that as like an aspect of his game because he's so good at that. But and I think Travis Kelce is pretty close borderline to being just fully washed right now. He looked awful in the Super Bowl, sloppy on routes, abysmal on blocking. I mean, like his big plays during the season were just kind of breaks in coverage.
And running his own route. Like he would literally make up his own route.
Yeah, but then like if you look at some of the routes he ran, he would like bump into like the defensive or the DB or linebacker, and then you just kind of stall there. There's that one play, I think there's one play you can see Mahomes is scrambling around and Travis Kelce just sitting there. There's 2 block plays you can see where the guy flies right past Travis Kelce. I'm not saying Travis Kelce's been a great blocker throughout his career, but like Kelce a year or 2 ago is able to get the chips right. The Super Bowl he didn't, but mostly I think Patrick Mahomes not being able to make pre-snap reads and adjustments is what ultimately lost in this game. Because I think when you think about Tom Brady, if he's in this situation, like coming out of half, he might be down 24-0, right? But the way they're playing football would 100% change. He's changing things at the line. He's calling hot routes. He's calling all these audibles to make it so the weaknesses of his O-line are mitigated, and he's calling routes and plays that make it so that his playmakers are able to get the ball faster to mitigate the pass rush in order to force them to blitz more than 4 guys. Because when you're only blitzing 4 guys, that means the rest of your team's in coverage. Means that's less amount of windows that you can throw into just because you have all these guys playing ball in coverage, and they're all good players too. So that's kind of my rant of the Chiefs, but yeah.
Yeah, so missed out on the header there, but diving into more detail, I love the detail you put into Patrick Mahomes, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the big thing is with him, I noticed the past 2 years he's been throwing the ball short a lot more, where he's just taking what the defense gives him.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he fell into the trap of just trying to anticipate the short throw way too often. And with a pass rush like the Eagles, they're different from other teams. They're not the same type of team. Whereas, like, they had the pass rush to get home if their secondary just sits in, like, on the short routes. And that's what the Eagles did. Like, Cooper DeJean, Zach Bond, like, they got their interceptions by doing that. But one of the ways that they play cover 4 here is they let the pass rushers do their thing. Ideally, you would want like wide alignment to get better pass rush angles, but they did a good job bull rushing the tackles, especially Sweat. He did a great job bull rushing Tooney. There were multiple plays where he would get knocked back. And the interception that Mahomes had on Bond, that was a direct result of a bull rush by Josh Sweat, where like Mahomes is like left shoulder is like getting caved in as he's releasing the ball, and you could tell it altered the throw. But Fangio calls it quads, and essentially how it's structured is you have both the corners like going deep like just retreating back. So you got like Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slade just retreating back. Then you have the safeties, the free safety taking an inside quarter, the deep curl, or like squeezing them out to the number one corner. And then you have the strong safety. He's either going to sit on the deep post or the curl. And if it is going deep, he's going to squeeze it to the free safety / the corner on the other side. Then for the linebackers, you got a nickel corner, like taking the flat in case the X receiver or the F receiver has a short route. Then you have the middle linebacker taking the hook route, which is over the middle, probably where Kelsey's going to be. And you're getting help from the free safety in that situation. So you saw a lot of times where you had safeties or linebacker and safety converge on Kelsey, even if he found a gap, which is why he had no receptions in the first half. And I said this last week. The key to stopping Chiefs is Travis Kelsey, because whenever he gets going, they win. It's simple as that. And when he was like completely taken out of the game, he is. And then the other linebacker in this coverage takes the other flat route on the other side. So he takes away the third receiver. So they're letting their front four win pretty much, and then their linebackers are kind of just taking away all the short routes there. So that kind of leads to your typical umbrella coverage, and it works throughout the league. But what made the Eagles different is that they didn't blitz one time, and they made sure that they rotated their coverages. So to your point about Mahomes, like pre-snap reading and making adjustments, he was not able to figure out the disguise coverages at all. And that's what you got to do against elite quarterbacks, especially if you have a pass receiver. Because multiple times they took away his first read, and by the time he was trying to get to his second or third read to figure it out, the pass rush already came home. So that was just a masterclass by Vic Fangio.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like Fangio cemented himself as like an all-time great in terms of defensive coordinators. Just with this game alone, honestly.
He was 0-8 against Mahomes, and no discredit to your Broncos, but the Broncos, whenever they faced the Chiefs and Fangio was their coach, they did a great job, like, giving him a hard time. Like, if you go back and watch those games, Mahomes is struggling in those games as well. The key thing was the Broncos didn't have the offensive firepower that the Eagles do. And that was probably the difference in the game. Where if you notice, it's like going into the third, fourth quarter, the Chiefs have 22 or like 19 points where they have to settle for 3 points because the defense does such a great job. So those who've been watching closely know that Fangio knows something on how to limit Mahomes. So this is sneaky end on Howie Roseman's job and Nick Sirianni in that. But I just wanted to describe the coverages in detail to show like what the Eagles are trying to do in order to just let their pass rush get.
Yeah. Also, props to Howie Roseman for like building this Eagles team, because like you look at this team and you're like, it's a bunch of superstars, but like in all honesty, it's a bunch of guys that I feel like were written off one way or another, and like they have like some type of bounce back or resurgence through the Eagles system. Because I mean, like you can say Jalen Hurts kind of, I mean, he balled out, but he was still a second round quarterback pick behind a guy that a lot of people thought was the franchise, you know, for the Eagles in Carson Wentz. Saquon Barkley, I mean, we knew he was going to be good, but it's like he was the guy that was like, oh, well, he hasn't lived up to his top 5 pick potential. You know, it was kind of like story there.
Becton.
Yeah, even look, Devontae Smith, he's too small to be a productive wide receiver one. Jordan Mailata, he's, you know, he comes from rugby. He might be okay at best. Mekhi Becton, like you said, he's a guy that was written off after being a top pick and having injuries. He missed literally 2 years with injuries. Jalen Carter fell in the draft because of off-field issues. They took a chance there. Zach Bond, like nobody expected him to be anything this year, right? So like he balls out here, and then even look at Darius Slay, where he ended his tenure with the Lions kind of looking sloppy. Everybody thought he was like, oh, I guess this is the end of big play Slay, but he comes with the Eagles, and all of a sudden he's like resurged himself as like one of the better cornerbacks in the league right now. And so it's like they've turned all these guys who I don't think a lot of people had a lot of expectations for going to be an Eagle, and they've just simply balled out, which I think is insane player development, player chemistry you've built, and just overall team building.
And a lot of people are like, had Sirianni lost the voice of the locker room, especially last year during that 5-game skid. But the key thing is like the Eagles just didn't have like a running game like they did this year. Like I try to tell you about DeAndre Swift. He is not an interior runner. Saquon Barkley is miles and tiers above DeAndre Swift. And that just made the whole difference in the game. And I think leaning into their philosophy and like the line and the offensive line and defensive line, like finally came through for them. I wanted to talk about Hurts because you brought it up high level. You talked about Mahomes' ability to struggle and like pre-snap reading. There are multiple times like where Hurts is a poised guy. He's always been a poised guy. Like that I had no doubt was going to be there. But you look at how Spagnuolo had like completely confused all the top tier quarterbacks in the AFC this year, late in games and one-score games. Just look at the AFC Championship with Josh Allen with that corner and safety blitz. He was not expecting it. He somehow got it to Dalton Kincaid, but again, not ideal. Not ideal for like I think Josh Allen wanted to finish that fourth down on his own 2 feet and on his backside. Then you look at Lamar Jackson. Then you look at Joe Burrow. Then you look at all these situations where they forced these guys to panic. And he couldn't do the Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, from that very first possession, pretty much threw a touchdown to Jahan Dotson. It got called back to the 1-yard line. But just that level of execution. Then the touchdown to Devontae Smith in the second half where he completely changed the play and changed it to a play action. And then the only mistake he had wasn't really his own when the line kind of messed up and forgot to tag Nick Bolden, and as a result, he got a hit on Hurts, and then Hurts had intended to give AJ Brown a nice one-on-one shot, but because of the hit, it got underthrown and it got picked. Like just the adjustments and like the poise to take what the defense gives them as well. I know we had talked about that with Mahomes, but like with Hurts. He has a full understanding. This is what your Tom Brady analogy of how to change plays at the line of scrimmage. And he wasn't always this way. At Alabama, he had clear flaws, but to his credit, he worked on aspects of his game to get where he is now. So he's completely deserving of the Super Bowl MVP. And if you couldn't give it to him, I could probably name about 5 or 6 defensive players you could have given it to. Because pretty much it was a complete team effort.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm super happy for Jalen Hurts, especially because like they'd gotten so close, a couple of years ago, where there was the controversial James Bradbury penalty that gave the Chiefs an extra set of downs, which led to them scoring the ball and getting that win. So I'm happy for the Eagles. Initially, I was like, I'm just rooting for Saquon Barkley, but then like honestly, the more I learn about Jalen Hurts, like the more of like a great guy he seems like he is, and like the easier it is to root for him. He's like, I read somewhere it's like every touchdown he scores, he pledges like $10K or something like that to like donate to charities. During like the Philadelphia heat wave last year or something, like he had donated like $100,000 or $200,000 to school so that they can have like proper air conditioning because he wanted to foster like a healthy learning environment. He donated like a part of his rookie contract to like a bunch of charities too, and I'm like, this like Jalen Hurts is such a stand-up guy and he's such a nice man. Like it's so easy to root for Jalen Hurts in my opinion, and like the adversary he's even faced in college, like when with the championship game at Bama where he gets benched, and then he goes to Oklahoma and he balls out there, he develops himself, and like he's such a hard worker. It's easy to root for him, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Stand-up guy, class personified, 100% earned his victory. Just his mentality, like he had a purpose before anybody had an opinion of him, and how he never wavered. I think it's just the big thing that stands out. But also give credit to Kellen Moore. He completely stayed ahead of the change. Yeah. He completely put this Eagles team in a situation where they couldn't get confused by Spagnuolo. Like Spagnuolo had a couple of great plays called. Like don't get me wrong, still a great DC, but Kellen Moore did a phenomenal job, completely deserving of a shot with the Saints if he ends up landing with that role. So, with that said, is this Eagles team here to stay?
Um, I'm just like I don't know who expected free agency re-signings are having to be. So I mean that's like one aspect. Obviously, I think we definitely see a regression from Saquon's play going into next season, especially with changing offensive coordinators here. Um, but I still think that they play at a high level. Maybe they go back to a stronger passing game, just with like a different offensive coordinator, you know. But I think they have enough young pieces that even if they lose a couple of guys, I think they're still cooking. Because I'm like, well, I mean, like Saquon's one of the older players at like 28 years old. Uh, Obviously, Brandon Graham's kind of an older player, but he wasn't technically part of the starting rotation. Slay may take a step back. Uh, I don't know. Maybe their safeties go play a little bit worse. I don't know. So it's like there's a couple guys, but I feel like
Zach Bond's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, but they have a strong enough core here. I think that like maybe they don't make it to the Super Bowl next season, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them make another deep playoff run next year as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd be worried about like the unfair advantages on that team. So like Kenneth Gainwell's probably going, but like more than that, Milton Williams had a great game. He's probably gone because they're probably trying to prioritize money for Mailata and probably who's the guy who had a good Josh Sweat. Like those are probably the ones they want to prioritize paying, and then you got to think about what do you do with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown when the time comes, and how do you plan for that? So while I don't think Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are going anywhere, I worry about like Milton Williams, a guy who stepped up, and what did they decide to do? So yeah. They definitely have some spots to address, but I definitely think they can make a run back to the championship game. They have the experience. They've shown they could play at the highest stage for 2 years now, notwithstanding the year before this year. So I would not be surprised. As far as the Chiefs go,
go ahead.
As far as the Chiefs go, they have to figure out their line. But go ahead. Keep talking over each other.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, like, Jalen Hurts has made the playoffs every year that he started in the NFL. So, like, I don't anticipate that really to change unless drastic changes happen to the team. But, like, most of the core stays. Yeah, Milton Williams might be a loss. A couple other guys maybe, like, losses to the team. But, I mean, they've proven they are good at developing talent, like, both young and old. And they're phenomenal at drafting. Like, the fact that Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were like just excellent during the Super Bowl was awesome. You know, where it's like the fact that you didn't have to hear Quinion Mitchell's name all that much during the Super Bowl, I think is an excellent sign for them. And then obviously the big play with Cooper DeJean on his birthday, which is kind of hype too, was, you know, I mean, it was really nice for them just for drafting and developing these two guys. These are two guys also that I mentioned that I think were going to be positive aspects into like why they might win this game. When we talked about it like a week ago or something, where like they're just better than James Bradbury, and I don't think they have the same weaknesses he does. And so I think that makes up for a lot of the coverage issues they had the last time in the Super Bowl. We saw that in play. I think regardless of who they lose, they probably are able to draft either a guy who backs up a guy who might leave in the future, or they'll draft an instant starter, which this seems like what they've been able to do the past like 5 years now.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Howie Roseman has done a phenomenal job with building up the past 3 draft classes. Like his hit rate has just been insane. And I would not be surprised if he just goes defensive lineman and offensive lineman again, because that's how they built this team that way. So that could be another direction that they go. The big thing is Zach Bond, I think. What do they decide to do with him? Because I think that's going to signal a huge move on like what they plan to do. But I would also probably target another backup to Saquon, because you cannot, as much as I love him, if he gets hurt, their counterpunch is gone. Like they're like source of it. So like just having a starter, maybe that's Shipley in year 2, but like just getting a known guy, I think to make that running back rotation a little bit deeper, I think would help like push the ceiling on this team. Because Jahan Dotson, I'm fine with as a number 3. Like Goddard's been phenomenal as a tight end spot. So like their supporting cast around Brown and Smith is ideal, adequate, if not above average. So yeah, just making sure you have backup plans for like your key skill position players and your stars. That would be where my focus would be.
Yeah. And like with the Eagles too, it's like you don't need to get the most excellent guy behind Saquon Barkley as well. Like I think we've seen in the past couple of years, like the offensive line is good enough to make an average to below average running back look really good. I mean, like DeAndre Swift, he played decent last season with the Bears, but like obviously, I think a lot of people thought he was a lot better than he was. As
the Eagles line.
And then we also see Miles Sanders where he balls out. We're like, oh, I guess he's the guy, He moves to Carolina. We're like, oh, maybe he helps the Carolina offense. He's like a non-factor. And so, like, honestly, like, obviously, I prefer something better than Gainwell and Shipley as your two guys behind Barkley, but I mean, they played all right behind the line. Shipley had a couple of nice big plays in his limited time.
It's a luxury. What I said was a luxury. Like if you can get like a used to be starter, like if you could get like a Kareem Hunt or Isaiah Pacheco because like the Chiefs want to get Nick Chubb and they're tired of those two, that would be ideal. That would kind of be ideal.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying that's going to happen. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, on the other side of it, where do the Chiefs need to go from here? I think the answer's obvious, but want to hear it from you.
Dude, fire Matt Nagy. He sucks. Oh my gosh, dude. Like, literally, since he's been their offensive coordinator again, they've kind of sucked. Like, I don't know. I hope that's the move they make. Obviously, Andy Reid is the end all be all with the offense, but like, I don't.
Wait. Do you want them to make that move?
In the spirit of being a football fan, this is the move they need to make because Nagy sucks. It's almost.
Oh really? Good. Oh really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't happen to know that, would I?
No. Yeah, and then honestly, I think this offseason, you move on from Hollywood Brown and you move on from DeAndre Hopkins as two pieces. And then obviously
talk about a brutal miss before the half ends. That was a brutal, like if they hit that, it might have been like a really tight game.
Yeah, because I like honestly with the receiver room too, I think Xavier Worthy is fine. I think he showed that he can be a dominant player. End of the game was kind of hard to actually like film study on just because Eagles had backups in by the point the Chiefs started actually scoring the football. So it's like, how much of it was actually them versus it just being backups. But Xavier Worthy, I think, was kind of the standout star on offense for them. Barring legal issues with Rashee Rice, I think just him and Worthy as your 1-2 punch, I think is perfectly fine. Juju Smith-Schuster seemed like the second best receiving option for the Chiefs offense during the Super Bowl, which is kind of crazy, which I did also in a way call, but I didn't expect it to be because everybody was just that awful. And I think so you go into next season, Worthy, Rice, and then you have Smith-Schuster as your like slot dude, I guess. I think I'm comfortable with Justin Watson as your 4, and then you just have like Nicky Remeggio as your lead kick returner and like a wide receiver 6 kind of guy or whatever, and that kind of fills out your top 6. I like because realistically, you don't really need guys 4, 5, and 6 to be that much of playmakers, especially because like remember how good Rashee Rice was at the start of the season? Like I think everybody hated the Chiefs that much more when he was balling out because how scary Rashee Rice was at playing football against literally every team. But that, and then plus, I think changing up the offensive line so that they're not awful. Jawan Taylor has frankly sucked his entire tenure here, despite being the highest paid offensive tackle during his free agency signing period like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So it's tricky because like Taylor costs a lot of money, and so it could be tough to dump, but then it's like you gotta properly invest in getting your guys on the offensive side for the O-line. Overall, I think their defense doesn't need too many changes. Sure, it was a high scoring game from the Eagles, but I mean, I think their number one goal was to slow down Saquon, which I think they did a great job at doing. But I think you just get gassed when your offense goes 3 and out, like literally the entire game, and you're just tired of playing defense. And so I think the Eagles are just able to take advantage of that and play and kind of just expose any weaknesses or just tiredness that the defense had. So I wouldn't make too many changes on the defense. Maybe get a better CB1, but so that it's CB1 plus Trent McDuffie in the slot. But that's kind of it.
Yeah, there are times where McDuffie was matched on Brown, and I'm like, I love McDuffie, but this is a terrible mismatch. Like, he should not be out there with Brown. I think I agree on the defense part. I think offensive line, maybe not start Joe Tooney at left tackle and actually start him at his position, which is really good. And then just rather start get a left tackle. Just get a left tackle that can play left tackle and double down on it so you have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're going to be able to rebuild this all in one offseason. I don't think teams will let them do that, where they're getting a left tackle or Orlando Brown via trade. I don't think anybody's trading the Chiefs jack. So it's going to have to be for the draft, I think. And then the receivers part, I somewhat disagree. I like Watson and Remigio as your kind of 5-6 options. So with 3 and 4, if we're moving on from Hopkins and Brown, Hollywood Brown, get a guy from the draft, get a guy from free agency, high-price free agency that can round out that group with the expectation that your third guy you get behind Rice and Worthy can play a number 2 role in case Rashee Rice is not available for legal issues or issues recovering from his ACL tear. So just have a backup plan with your receiver with the expectation he's going to start outside Worthy, and he's kind of a nice to have as a 3. If you can find that guy, I think it will be huge. And I think for Mahomes, it's how do I play within structure better when I have pressure bearing down on me?
Yeah.
Without going to Kelsey. Because eventually Kelsey's going to retire, and it's okay, now you got to build chemistry with Noah Gray on the level that you had with Kelsey, where he's running those routes instead of Kelsey. Noah Gray has done phenomenal as a tight end too. That's a great call by you. But he's been running the routes and been capitalizing on one-on-one coverage because of the presence of Kelsey. So when Kelsey eventually moves on, whether this year or next year or 2 years from now, how does Mahomes structure his game that way? He can start preparing for that this season. So that would be kind of the direction I would go offensively focused. I think defense, they're fine. They've limited teams enough. They confused and battered teams enough. Now it's just about how do we round out the offensive line so we can have 3-minute possessions even against the best pass rushing teams.
Yeah, I like what you said there. And when I said dumping off Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins, I wouldn't be I'd expect them to make a move to add something to this receiver room too, not just eating a bear. But worst comes to worst, I think Hollywood Brown and Hopkins, while they had some good moments, I don't feel like they lived up to the expectations that I think people were thinking that they might play as. So I think, Worthy and Rice as your 1-2 option, obviously, again, barring Rice doesn't face legal consequences, I think it's a good starting point. And I think your receiving game can function well enough with just those two and then some mix of backups. But again, having another piece, whether it be at free agency or you take a decent draft pick, like a day 2 pick maybe on a receiving option, and then you spend round 1 going after offensive line, or you just try to see which O lineman heading into free agency might be a good left tackle target. But yeah, Kareem Hunt might leave. I don't know. And then you have Isaiah Pacheco, who's going to be fully recovered, so hopefully he plays better that way.
I would still try to get an upgrade at running back if I could, because their running game is stifled, and I can't help but wonder what if Nick Chubb moves on from the Browns. He's probably 80% of what he was, but teams are wary of picking him up. That would be a perfect spot if he was on the Chiefs. Probably not for anybody in the division, but we've seen what J.K. Dobbins can do in a new setting. So if I'm the Chiefs, there's a lot of great running backs in this draft coming up. I would try and make an investment in there and seeing like, okay, can we get an upgrade from what we have now? Because we didn't even talk about their lack of like execution on the run. Like they call it run pass options. I'll give them a little bit more credit. But like actual specific design run calls, Chiefs did not do enough of in this game.
Yeah. Chiefs tried the ball 7 times with the running backs.
Tom Brady would have not done that. Against a pass rush like that, he would have not done. It would have been quick screens, quick hitches, running game, like all like mixed in sequence, and then play action. Like so, you have to defend the run. Like what if it gets a great pass coverage, like and pass rush defense on top of that too? You have to mix all those things up. And the fact that the Chiefs didn't do that, like one, because they probably weren't comfortable with the guys they had in their roster running the ball on those run plays, but also two, they dug themselves a hole because of mistakes Mahomes and the offensive line made that they had to pass. So like shoring up like the weaknesses that help you in game scripts where you face a great pass rush is where they have to go.
Yeah. Yeah, but because they lost so badly, the Chiefs are definitely going to do a lot of change-ups over the offseason, which makes them really good next year, which will kind of suck because they're already kind of really good this year. So that kind of sucks, but hopefully some other
Question. Think about what would have happened if they won. You would have been even more miserable than you are.
I'm beyond happy right now that they got absolutely manhandled the way that they did. It's just an unfortunate consequence of them getting manhandled the way that they did. My personal final score of the game is 34-6 because after that I consider that all kind of garbage time. But
yeah, me too.
Once the Gatorade is poured, points don't matter.
Yeah,
but
100%. But I'll play devil's advocate. If you're Baltimore, if you're Cincinnati, if you're the Chargers, if you're the Bills, your eyes light up because you're like, you can beat this team? You mean a great pass rush can limit them and slow them down and just like cutting off all the quick passes? It's like a light bulb went off in their head, and I would not be surprised if most of the league hits the pass rushers and defensive tackles heavy this offseason. Because if this game showed anything, it's you need to have great pass rushers and defensive linemen. Because if you have all 4 of the 5, you're probably going to the chip. So,
yeah,
I get what you're saying about the Chiefs, like trying to shore up their weaknesses, but they're also going to have to fork up money and make quick decisions and stuff like that. And I'm hoping for the Bears' sake that they're not able to come to agreement with Trey Smith, because I would love Trey Smith on the Bears.
Yeah. I like the reason I come up with this too is I mean, like, look at when the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers.
How quickly they rebuilt their offensive line. But they had to trade for Orlando Brown and then draft Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith in the same draft.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that happening this year. I don't think they're addressing it as quickly as they did last time. Because one, NFL teams pay attention to history. Do you think if the Chiefs come calling for a tackle just because the Chiefs do it and call for it means that they will trade him? I don't think so. I don't think anybody wants anything to do with the Chiefs. Not after what they did. They are jealous and they are envious right now. And they're not going to let the Chiefs get any further than they did.
Yeah. But still, I mean, it's like free agency hits. The draft is there. I mean, like...
But they have to worry about their own guys. They have to worry about their own guys that sit out, right? So, like, it's like, I don't know if they gave the extension to Creed Humphrey yet either. But, like, he's a guy you got to think about. Trey Smith is a guy you got to think about. Like, they only have so much of cap room, buddy. So it's like, yeah, when you have that, and then you have all those defensive ballers that are just come out of the blue, you're probably going to lose some of them in free agency because of money. So it's, I don't think it's as simple as like add free agent draft pick here, and they're all of a sudden like juggernaut number 1 option in the AFC. They got to do a lot of work to try and balance the re-signing and the free agency front. So primarily for the draft is probably where they're going to improve the most.
Yeah, and I think it'll be through the draft. Um, I'm looking right now at salary cap space too. Chiefs have 11 million or 11.5 million going into free agency, so obviously we'll see how that works out. Honestly, if the Chiefs had won, I'm pretty sure Travis Kelce would have retired, which would have been good for them because he played pretty poorly. But that would have added like what an extra like 15 to 20 million dollars of cap space to the Chiefs. But
He's
yeah,
not going to retire after this loss, man. No way.
yeah, I know. I'm like, no way. Like, again, if they won, I'm pretty sure, like 80% sure he probably would have retired. But like, if I was him, I'd rather get blown out in the playoffs and be like, well, we had our time, and he retires after that, rather than we made it to the top, we get blown out, and I'm done. Like, no player's gonna like. I don't think any player could retire after that. Yeah. But also, I just found out that Patriots have 120 million in cap space next season, dude.
Lil Williams, welcome to the Patriots. Dude, that guy's gonna get a payday. Like that's wild. That's wild.
That's crazy.
T. Higgins. T. Higgins, are you like do you want 100 million from the Patriots for 1 year, or do you want to stay with the Bengals? You gotta pick your choice, man. Like, if I'm T, I'm sticking with the Bengals because I don't think he's gonna get into a better situation. But
yeah, the top rumor, we can talk more free agents some other time, but the top rumor I heard with T. Higgins is he might go to the Packers. It's like Devontae and T are kind of like two top candidates to Green Bay.
Thanks, Corstian. Yeah, okay, I'm leaving. I'm done after that. You just had to say the Packers, huh?
Yeah, I was talking to someone who's a big Packers fan apparently, and he was talking about who like some of the candidates, free agency candidates to the Green Bay were rumored to be, but then he was also like, but Green Bay never does anything in free agency, so it's probably not going to happen. So on that end, you're probably safe.
Yeah, at least we beat them with a field goal last time. We should have swept. We should have swept them, but I'll say my hanger for another day. We got Ben Johnson. Things are looking up.
Yeah, and at least you're not the
Lions are screwed.
Negative 54 million in salary, but yeah.
I mean, that's nothing new. Mickey Loomis, what are you doing? But all right, that's it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed the Super Bowl episode recap. Sorry about not recording last week. Things with work have been like crazy right now. But we always appreciate your support. You can follow us on our Instagram page at amon.a.mission. YouTube channel, I'm on a mission. 3 words. Corstian, what do you got to say to the people, the lovely people that listen to this podcast?
Duval.
All righty, guys. Take it easy.